Hi, good evening, and welcome back to Singer on the Sand. Last week, we read about the kindness of little Marta and how she was so kind to the witch doctor, Tama. And then we ended our chapter about Tama and the chief deciding that the chief and some men would go and bring back the Islam teachers. So our chapter tonight, we're on chapter 5, and is titled Learning About God. From the day the boy Hans came to the island of Sangir with his father, the big teacher, Satu had been his friend. He had gone with him into the jungle to find rattan for binding the timbers of the building. He had helped carry rocks for the flower garden around the teacher's house. But it was not until the house and the fence and everything about the teacher's home and garden were finished, and Hans already knew many words of the island language, that Satu led him one afternoon to his secret perch among the rocks where he loved to sit and watch the fire mountain. The volcano looked closer from here. As the two boys climbed up among the rocks, Satu watched Hans' face and saw his blue eyes widen with surprise as he saw the huge form of the volcano so close. Smoke billowed from the cone-shaped top and spurts of fire shot into the sky. Here it was quiet, so quiet that the only sound was the lap of the waves on the shore below and the low rumble of thunder that came from deep under the sea floor. Hans pointed down. Why? It is the fire spirits under the ground, Satu explained. They are angry, and when they are uncomfortable or displeased, they always growl and thunder. Hans shook his head. Satu could see that he did not understand. He pointed to the volcano. How far away do you think it is? Now Satu understood the question his friend had asked, but he didn't know how to explain that the island people measure all distances by the time it takes them to travel to the place. He knew that men could row out to the volcano and back in the space of time between breakfast and the middle of the day when the sun stands at mid-heaven. Satu knew that sometimes the island men went out to get birds' eggs from the small sandy beach on the south side of the fire mountain. It was a brave thing to do, because everyone feared the fire spirits that lived there. But of course the eggs were delicious and worth risking something for. It's not far, Satu said at last. Can't you smell the smoke? Then Satu explained how the island people in ancient times had offered human sacrifices to the mountain to quiet the fire spirits when they became unusually fierce and angry. Satu could not remember, and his father could not remember, of the mountain smoking quite so much as now. As the boys stood looking at the south side of the volcano, Satu saw something on the narrow beach of white sand that lay in a curve of the fire mountain's base. Look, he grabbed Hans' arm. It's a big bird, a seabird. That's the kind of bird that laid the eggs our men used to go after. Hans shaded his eyes with his hand and looked. Yes, it's so small, like an ant. I can hardly see it. I guess there is something there. It moves. The boys watched the bird until it flew off toward the jungle north of them. Then they settled down in the perch among the rocks. Our witch doctor has come back, Satu told Hans. You know, the one who owns the hut where you lived at first. He came back last night. He says the fire spirits are angry because you came, but I think they are angry because my father wouldn't give the teacher a place to build his house. This speech was too long for Hans to follow. Satu laughed at him and said the words over and over until at last he saw that Hans did understand most of what he had said. Is the witch doctor there in the house where we lived? Hans asked. Is he there right now? Yes, of course, Satu laughed again. Of course he's there. Where else would he be? It's his hut. My sister little Marta goes there every day to play house, Hans said. I must go home and tell her not to go there anymore. She might bother him. He will not like to have her come." "Oh, he wouldn't hurt Marta. He is really a kind person. He is good to sick people, and he even takes care of sick animals. He wouldn't hurt a little child." "Of course no one would want to hurt Marta. I wasn't thinking of that," Hans said. "I just thought it might worry him." The boys still gazed out over the calm sea and the smoking mountain, when the sound of oars disturbed them. They looked down at the little wharf and saw the village's largest fishing boat pulling away with several island men at the paddles. Satu stood up and strained his eyes to see better. Yes, it was his father's boat. Now why hadn't they told him they were going fishing tonight? Why hadn't they taken him along? "I don't like that," he said to Hans. "When my father's big boat goes out to catch fish, I always go." Satu saw the men put up the sail and tack toward the south. He could see them better now. "You know, Hans," he said, "those men are all dressed in their feast clothes. They can't be going out to fish with all their ornaments on and fixed up like that. They must be going to a feast somewhere on one of the southern islands." Hans watched the boat. "Is that your father, there in the front of the boat?" "You mean the one with his head turned away?" "No, I'm sure it isn't. He wouldn't go without me." The two boys walked back to the house on the sand. "Come on in the house and let us learn our verse for today," Hans said as they came to the low wall. Inside, the teacher took down one of the magic boxes and opened it. Then he taught the boys their memory verse. "The Father himself loveth you." Over and over the boys said the words until the teachers said they might go now to the jungle to get some thin pieces of rattan, because he needed to tie up the flower plants that were grown so big and bushy that some of them sagged and bent. "What does the verse mean?" Satu asked Hans as they walked across the salt grass toward the trees. "The Father who loves us is God up in heaven." Hans pointed at the bright sun and the sky. "He lives up there among the stars and all the bright things. But he sees us all the time. He hears what we say. He is the one who loves us." "Is it to this one that your father sings in the mornings and evenings?" "Yes, my father sings because God makes his heart glad, and I guess God likes to hear singing. All people who worship God sing." "I have seen your father, the big teacher, talk to the magic boxes. I have heard him talk to the sky and the top of your house. Why does he do that?" Hans smiled. "At worship time, my father reads from the holy book. Then we all kneel down and we lift up our eyes and pray to God. That means we talk to him." "You mean that you can talk to the God of heaven and he hears what you say?" "Yes, of course. He hears to us in the verses like we learned today. He talks to us in the verses like we learned today and in songs. We talk to him when we pray." By this time the boys had entered the jungle and they slashed their way among the thick brush under the huge old trees looking for strands of the rattan vine. Most of what they found was too big and thick. After long searching, they discovered a few small thin strings of young growth. This they would wound up in their hands, being careful of the stickers. The vines were many feet in length and had already climbed to the tops of tall trees. The boys pulled and twisted to bring them down. "If your father splits this, it should be just right for tying up the flowers," Satu said as they started back. Satu walked down the narrow trail they had cut. Hans was bigger than Satu. He seemed to grow faster and he was stronger, but Satu was quicker and he knew the jungle, so he went first. Today Satu was eager to get home. He couldn't get that boat out of his thoughts. Where was the fishing boat going, and why were so many village men in it, and why were they all dressed up in their ornaments? The boys heard a sound, a low cry. It could be a baby sobbing. They stopped on the trail and listened. It's a monkey, Satu said. It cries as though it may be hurt. After a short search, they found the tiny creature. He sat on the limb of a tree all alone. With every breath, he cried and twisted. When little Satu climbed up to get him, he did not move. He wound his little arms around Satu's wrist as the boy slid down through the tangle of vines and branches. The boys turned him over and looked through his black fur, but there was no mark on him or any injury that they could find. He looked fat and healthy, but he cried until Satu tied him in one corner of his loincloth. I will take him to Tama, the boy said. He will know what ails him. The two friends parted at the edge of the jungle. Hans took all the rattan in his hands, swinging the coils over his shoulders. Satu took the tiny monkey and went toward Tama's house. I will see you when we sing this evening, he called back as he ran up the path. Tama's door was open and Satu called in front of it the customary words of greeting. Tama came to the door and looked down at him. "Ah, I see you have brought me a sick monkey." "How do you know he's sick?" Satu asked as he ran up the ladder into the room. "He must be sick or you could never have caught him. He would have followed his family into the treetops." "You will make him better, won't you?" Satu put the little creature in Tama's hands. "I will try," he said. Tama brought out a little packet of herbs all dried and pounded fine. He mixed some of the green powder with water in a coconut shell bowl and held it under the monkey's nose. The little fellow began to eat the mixture with greedy haste. "You see," Tama said, "he knows what medicine is good for him. He must have eaten something that was bad for him." Tama looked sharply at Satu. Boys do the same things sometimes. Satu wondered whether the witchman thought he had eaten something bad. He waited for Tama to say more, but the witchman stroked and petted the monkey, and after the tiny animal had snuggled down in Tama's loincloth and appeared to be asleep, Satu asked, "Where did the fishing boat go just a little while ago?" "It went to the southern islands," Tama said. "Your father, the chief, ordered it." "But why? What is the reason? Our boats do not go on such long journeys for nothing. What does my father want them to bring from the southern islands?" Tama's face grew stern. "Your father, the chief, intends to invite teachers of Islam to come here and lead our people in the good way." Satu felt his heart sink away toward some bottomless place. "Why does he do that? Already a teacher has come to our village, and my father will not give him even enough ground to build a house. Why does he want more teachers?" "The teachers of Islam are different," Tama explained. "They will not spoil our customs. They will not forbid our feasts and our dancing and our spirit worship. Of course, we would have to get rid of our pigs. They don't like pigs. But we don't have many. We can make a big feast and eat them all up at once. They will expect us to do as we please. Don't you see? They will not change our ways as the big teacher is doing." "If the Islam teachers will not change anything, then what is the use of having them?" Tama's face softened a little and his voice was kind. "Now, Satu, what is it that you like so much about this big teacher's magic?" "I like it that the God of heaven knows me and that I can talk to him and he will talk with me. I like to feel the gladness running through me like a river when I hear the singing." Then Tama laughed. "Foolish boy, not even the smallest spirits of the jungle will speak to a young boy like you. How then will a great spirit such as this God you talk about, what attention would he pay you?" Satu didn't know the answer to this question, so he stood close to Tama and stroked the soft fur of the little monkey that lay curled in the witchman's loincloth. "What will the teacher do when the Islam teachers come?" the boy asked. "He will go away, of course. when he sees that the people would rather follow Islam. Satu looked straight into Thomas' eyes. He will not go away. You wait and see, and not all the people will choose Islam. Thomas smiled again, and Satu choked down a cry of rage and ran from the room. He burst into his own door, calling for his father in a loud voice, but Chief Meriden was not home. "Where's my father, the chief?" he asked his mother, who tended the baby on her back and cooked at the same time. "He's gone on a long journey, my son. He will not return for many days." Then Satu knew that the man he had seen in the front of the fishing boat was his father, Chief Meriden, had gone himself to call Islam teachers to Great Sangir. That ends our story, our chapter 5. You know, we need to pray for our missionaries who are overseas, who are sharing the word of God to all the people around the world, doing as God has commissioned us to do. We need to pray for their safety. And so tonight, when you say your prayers, pray for our missionaries. Thank you. And next week, we will have chapter 6, the snake charm. Good night.